How's everybody doing out there? You okay out there? Everyone's here? Everyone's here who needs to be here? Yeah, absolutely. Let's all acknowledge that we're all here right now. So, bonjour de Niigaanwewidam Sinclair. Bonjour Mazina Giizhik. It's nice to be here. It's very nice to be with all of you, especially nice to be with many of you that have come from such a long distance to be here for today. Today we're going to do a lot of heavy lifting work today because I think it's our job to support each other, care about each other on this very important day where we honor a very special man, a really great Canadian, a person who is an Anishinaabe, a Nini, a person who has cared for all of us for so long, and today we will care for him. My father, the Honorable Murray Sinclair, Mazina Giizhik. Yes, of course, feel free. I think Dad's frequent phrase was, reconciliation is a participatory endeavor, so feel free anytime that you feel the need to speak to him and recognize him. Few people have shaped this country in the way that my father has, and few people can say they changed the course of this country the way that my father had to put us on a better path, all of us, Indigenous, Canadians, newcomers, every person, whether you are new to this place or whether you have been here since time immemorial from the beginning, all of us have been touched by him in some way. He is in many ways the epitome of all of us, the good, the bad, the great, all of that parts that comes together to this place. Murray Sinclair is one of those few people who has impacted all of us for years to come, and that our great-great-great-grandchildren and beyond will speak about him. Today we're going to come together to remember and pay tribute to the incredible life that he lived and the great gift that he has given to all of us, to this country, to this place, to his family, who are all here today, looking down upon me, making sure that I say the right things. I would not be here without my incredible sisters who have worked so very hard to make sure that all of these processes for the past week have been done in a kind and respectful and a Midewiwin way. And there have been many questions, and so before we begin today, I want to acknowledge two really important things about today's ceremony. And the first is that you will notice that my father's life vessel is not here, and that my father's life vessel has been in the earth now for a few days. And you may be wondering why it is that we perhaps did not do this earlier, or that perhaps there's been many questions of why there was not, for instance, a Canadian state funeral for my father. And perhaps there was some misunderstanding that it was the government's decision or it was whomever's decision in order to do that. But it was a family decision to make sure that he has done his final steps in this life, on this side, in this reality, would be taken as a Midewiwin, as a person, a part of our lodge, as a fourth degree Midewiwin leader within our community, as the Western Doorway Chief of the Three Fires Midewiwin Lodge, that he would be for 4 days with us, the family, with our community, and be taken through that journey with his spirit in order for him to enter into the earth. And that begin that journey, which has now been taking place for a while now, going to visit his brothers, his aunties and uncles, his grandparents, his father, and of course, his most beloved person in the world, my mother. And that ceremonial purpose, that ceremonial journey was of essential importance, not just to him, but also to all of us as Midewiwin people. And so we've been doing that. And I want to say a big miigwech to everyone at the Kaboto Center for giving us that honor and recognition and giving us literally a 24-hour run of the place. So if we could just give a little round of applause to the Kaboto Center. And the second thing I want to do is, now that he is on his journey, now that he is taking those steps towards my mother, now that he is doing that work, I ask all of you to recognize him if you use his Anishinaabe name, Mazina Giizhik Iban, that you attach that small Iban at the end of his name, because that is the recognition that he is now an ancestor that is doing that work on that side for all of us. And that if you're able to, if you remember, if you could do that work, because when he hears his name, he may be tempted to come back to this side, or may be tempted to look back, or he may be tempted to think about us and feel that we are sad. But in our ceremonies, it is the most joyous time because he is going to his relatives. So if you could do that on behalf of all of us, Mazina Giizhik Iban, that you recognize him as so. I can think of nobody that's perhaps more remarkable and useful and helpful and really supportive of our family than Broken Head Ojibwe Nation Chief Gordon Blue Sky, who's going to be invited to give our land acknowledgement. I want to say two things about Gordon. Gordon phoned me on the morning that Dad passed, and he spent time on the phone with me praying, and he also offered a prayer of acknowledgement for his spirit on the first morning that he attended an event. And so we're going to ask Gordon Blue Sky to come up and give a territorial acknowledgement. But this individual I've known from the very dark days of high school, but I've also known him as now a leader in our community. So please welcome to do a territorial acknowledgement, Broken Head Ojibwe Nation Chief Gordon Blue Sky.
Miigwech Niigaan. Bushu and Denewi Magraduk, Wasa Giizhik, Indigenous Dam, Waskanabe Unji. Thank you everyone for being here today. I want to start off by saying on behalf of our Treaty 1 nations, we honor the life of the late Treaty 1 icon, Mazina Giizhik Iban, and the legacy he leaves behind. He has blazed a trail that many are now following without fear and without having been the first to do it. When I'm having a bad day and feel like the whole world is on my shoulders and feel like giving up, I think of our friend and all he faced and all he challenged. I'm then reminded that I don't have it so bad. When I'm having and for me, when I was thinking about before I was coming here, and I was talking to my wife, and I was talking about the veterans, the Indigenous Veterans Day that we just celebrated, and I think about the warriors out there that have dedicated their whole life for fighting for our people. And he is someone that I will now recognize as being one of those ones who have never stepped foot on a battlefield, but spent his whole life honoring and fighting for our people. We are fortunate enough to celebrate and honor his life earlier this year at the Treaty 1's Awards Gala, where he received our first Lifetime Achievement Award for his work and advocacy on behalf of our people. This award will now forever be known as the Murray Sinclair Lifetime Achievement Award, and you will have to have lived one heck of a life to receive it. Well, we all owe a debt of gratitude to his life's work and, of course, his family. And we got to give them a special miigwech as well for sharing him with us all. Because I know firsthand that it's the love, guidance, and support of family that makes up the key ingredients to success. Mazina Giizhik, Iban, has lived a life like no other, but as he was, we are hopeful. We are hopeful for a brighter future for our children, one where they are supported and loved, and free of the fear and trauma that many of our grandparents and parents had to endure. The late Honorable Murray Sinclair committed his life to making ours better. With this in mind, we honor the sacredness and the importance of our land and the ancestors that walked where we are standing today. The Oji Cree, the Cree, the Dene, the Dakota, the Inuit, and our Anishinaabe nations, and of course, our Métis relatives, who paved the way to what we now know as Manitoba, and will forever be home to all treaty people. Miigwech, rest in honor, my friend. Niigaanwewidam Sinclair. Thank you.
We now welcome Knowledge Keeper Jason Peranto from Lenape Nation in Ontario to bring an opening prayer. Nous invitions maintenant Jason Peranto de la Nation Lenape à offrir une prière d'ouverture.
Abojusa, Handwe Magnadok, Inibijikins, Dijnaka, Samakins of the Dam, Nissing I got Dishamate, O Nongo and Animo Sema, Aquadashiba, the Gwecham Oege, Halmanado, and we Shaganashi, Machinego. So just in this way, I want to say thank you to the family for the invitation. We think about you a lot, as today we're all gathered to remember we know him as our uncle. I'm only going to say his name once, Mazina Giizhik, but we know him as Uncle Murray, and how we respect and honor how he lived in this way and his belief as a Made chief, as you heard, and how he did so much work for us. And today we think about the family, but we want to say really a miigwech to the children, the family, for allowing us to have time with him and his work, and this community, his community, and especially all his kindness and generosity. We really appreciate that here today. And so for our relatives here gathered, we're going to share some words in Anishinaabe Moan, which is language as he heard and pursued and shared in the Made Lodge, the Three Fires Made Lodge, where he was a road chief and a Western Doorway chief, and his determination, his kindness is something we want to remember. And some of the things that we think about is the fire that was lit here in 2010 and the work that's continued since then. And we hear uncles and we say, Gino went to go, no Kimen. It's up to all of us to keep up the good work in this way. So, Ajino go genin, ha dwe morgan dog, Jen animo sema, Kinin wewene, Guachama, Gimashomas, Nana Gishemeldo, me to go basic all man dog, Kinew, Gendan, Kinew Gitude. Oh, when is Nalimo, Sema, when Emino Shnang, then the Shange, Nayo, Sema. Get not get what they are, Wabin, Halma, Shomas, Al Nokomis, Al Begashania, Markel, Binabian. Oh, when is on Mishnamino, Nogum. Now get what they are, Jawan, Halma, Shomas, Nokomis, Al Begashania, Markel, Binabian. Ejinayo, Sema, when Egimino Shnage, Ejinayo, Sema. Now get what they get, Han Gabion, Halma, Shomas, Nokomis. How big a shania markel be an abin, oh, any dappen mosh, not say, Mammy, Scott Bijou, and Schnagishe, what's in Gaye. She'll get what they are get, and how Mishomus no commiss. Me or dear dancing, oh, Jimobi Madis when we went in and the ma, or do a magna comaya, or Mark Shaggy, I bade them in up with Madis you are. Is named the monogum, which now we be Madis when she go get what they Gishagon, Tam Giizhik, Nijo Giizhik, Nisso Giizhik, how been a show at any Gishagon. Get the up chair, good em, come de gunning, which now gay up with Matsu and Gaye. She go gay ma, give my man and a king, which now the up the Madis when don't do Shnange. Kina so kana ke hanatam beat kamigak, Nijo beat kamigak, Neso beat kamagai, Neso kamigong. Oh, when is Naimo Sema, when it don't do, when it get in shaman or shangish, Naimo Sema. Meaning all gay, I miss a wiggish gone. When a Mojagish, but where we are now, they watch 1 8 ago. Get Mojagi on dark, can't see about me on pier. Used to win the mom on the dog gone. When it don't do a shnanish on dog goes young. Showing the Mishnah Gishamanido. Showing the Mishnah Gishamanido. Showing the Mishnah Gishamanido. Showing the Mishnah Gishamanido. Can't get now.
Miigwech to Jason for supporting not just today's event, but also Jason and all of the amazing members out in the Rosso Lodge, the Medewan Lodge in Rosso, were there the night that Dad entered palliative care and sang him into that other side, sang his spirit. And so we want to recognize them and Kirby Nelson in particular. So if you could just please give us a big round of applause for Kirby Nelson and all the amazing Jason and everybody. To try to encapsulate Dad into a speech or anything like this, it would be very difficult. It's very difficult, of course, for my siblings and myself. We all had different experiences with Dad. And so I'm going to do my best here to talk a little bit about Dad. And I don't really know what you'd call this. In case you haven't noticed this is very sort of a Anishinaabe gathering, meaning it's not always like a typical kind of funeral or a typical kind of gathering. Like, I'll give you an example. We were backstage and we of course have the Prime Minister here, and the Prime Minister's come from a very long distance, and of course all of us have different experiences with Dad. And the Prime Minister comes in the room, and all my family are sitting on the couches there, and particularly my auntie and my uncle, and so they're from town. They're from where we grew up, out in St. Peter's. And the Prime Minister comes in, and of course, understandably so, very emotional, very, wants to interact and engage with us, but then particularly wants to meet Dad's sister. So he comes over and he meets Auntie Diane, and is chatting with Auntie Diane, and then meets Uncle Walter, and they have a moment, and it's kind of a tearful moment, understandably so. And then Uncle Walter turns to him and goes, "So how about those Jets?" So let's give the Jets a big round of applause. Way to go, Jets. So, by the way, Dad and I, he still wanted to know the Jets score, like right up to the end. So Dad, we're not running things according to perhaps what you might be used to, because it's very Anishinaabe. And at this point in our ceremony, it's also a very joyous time for us, because we know that my father is on a journey right now to see beautiful people. But I want to share some words about my father right now. You all know his accomplishments, perhaps as a lawyer, as a judge, a commissioner, senator. My sisters and his grandchildren knew him as Nibaba, Dad, or Mushum, grandfather. His name, though, was Mazina Giizhik, the one who speaks of pictures in the sky. That beautiful name was bestowed to him by Anabanase, a beautiful, wonderful leader amongst our people, and was also someone who regularly was a counsel and a supporter of him. But regardless of how you knew Dad, he was a man you instantly wanted to visit with, spend time sharing food alongside, or listen to the many stories he would share freely and with a generosity that made people never forget him. In fact, it was impossible to go through a mall without 17 people, 2 of them that he sentenced into jail at one point, coming up to him and saying how much they appreciated and loved, even those he sent to jail. He was an advocate, a fighter, and some of you may have just learned, a poet, an artist. and perhaps most of all, he was an educator. He was a first of almost every single room he walked into. I just want you to think about that for a minute. He was a first. He was the first Indigenous person of almost every single room in a time in which Indigenous peoples were not welcome in courtrooms, in boardrooms, classrooms. That meant he spent a lot of time explaining, teaching, listening, and walking alongside a country that didn't always want to hear what he had to say. But eventually, much of that country came to listen, to learn, and to take action with him. I want to tell you about a few things maybe you don't know, alongside the things that you do know about him, his work, and his loves. I want to tell you about what he gave us, truly, the family, but then also to each one of you, what he gifted to all of us, and what he left for us to do. I know that many of us on stage will come up and share many of these stories and ideas, and what I hope is that you hear about his incredible accomplishments, which are pages and pages and pages long, about the fact that he at one time was so proud to be the vice president of the Interlake region of the Manitoba Métis Federation. That's right. Is that David clapping? Or that he was a person who started working in his law practice in Selkirk, and he was Elijah Harper's campaign manager. Did you know that? He was the reason Elijah Harper got elected. He represented Indigenous communities in land claims and criminal defenses, and we can just keep going. He's proudest, really. A lot of people might not know this, working for the Four Nations Confederacy, the Manitoba Human Rights Commission, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and all the different ways that he represented them. And of course, he is Manitoba's first Indigenous judge. He's most proud, and if you were to ask him, if you were to say, what is he most proud of, people would probably talk about the TRC, they'd probably talk about those work at the Senate, but for him, the proudest moment of his career was heading up the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry in 1988 with Justice Hamilton. It's no coincidence that the same week that my dad was appointed to the bench was the shooting of J.J. Harper. And that investigation into Harper's shooting, and also the subsequent investigation into the death of Helen Betty Osborne, he spearheaded and brought justice to those situations. In 1991, he released, the AJI released their final report, making 296 recommendations for changes within the justice system. And it still stands today as the most innovative, the most overhauling, and the most creative offers of change for any institution in Canadian history, and was in many ways the forerunner for many things we now know as the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, of course the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the Murdered Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry. This is not to mention, of course, his incredible work with the pediatric cardiac inquest, which was the hardest process for him, for reasons that you'll hear about in just a minute, because he had to investigate the deaths of children, which was very hard for him. And finally, when he ended up his time here in Manitoba, he ended it as a Court of King's Bench judge, for, again, the first Indigenous judge to ever be given this honor. And this is where you get to know him, for many of you in the country who are watching, and for those of you perhaps that may not have been aware of all the things that he did. Because in 2009, he was appointed to be the lead commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which you're going to hear a lot about for today. And so I'll let others comment on the incredible work that the TRC did. But the TRC stands one of the most innovative and powerful moments, I think, in this country's history, because it wasn't a government inquiry, it was created by survivors. And it was the survivors who believed in my father, Marie Wilson, Wilton Littlechild, to be able to bring peace and justice to what is this Canada's most egregious crime. And that those calls to action give us all a path forward and work to do. Some of you may not also know that he did other work after the TRC in the Senate, but also that he investigated the Thunder Bay Police in 2017. At the Senate, he passed policies and laws, legislation on LGBTQ2+ rights, Indigenous languages, rights, child welfare legislation. And then finally, he returned home in 2021 to be a mentor to young lawyers, one of whom, Danielle, I don't know where you are, wrote an incredible piece talking about him in the Free Press. Finally, he was like, I'm just going to keep working, because apparently mom didn't like him at home too much. She drove him crazy, or he drove her crazy, sorry. He then began to become Chancellor of Queen's University, and in 2023 helped oversee the negotiations for the multi-billion-dollar federal settlement compensating Indigenous children and families for being unfairly treated by Canada's child welfare system. And so I have a confession to make, and it's hard to make this and stay it here, especially in such a beautiful, solemn moment. It's a hard one that's taken me a long time to learn, but it really came from the teaching of watching my dad, having a front row to my dad, being with my sisters, who are the most insightful, brilliant, sharp people in my family, to remind me, to help me learn. Because for a long time, I've been very angry at you, Canada. I'm angry at the way that you took Dad from us. I'm angry at the way that you involved him spending a lifetime dealing with this country's racism, division, violence, and genocidal actions. I'm angry that he was often the lone voice of dignity against a wall of callousness, and that he would work often with leaders who would treat human beings so poorly. I'm angry that he didn't spend time doing what he loved to do. Carpentry, by the way. He was a carpenter. And that he missed most of our lives as we gifted him to a country who didn't always treat him as a gift. I confess, it's not now because I'm over it, but it's really a recognition that all of us who are my age and below have watched our parents who have fought for the same things my father fought. And we have watched our parents spend their lifetimes fighting racism and violence and genocide. All of us sat at home while our parents spent time fighting institutions and laws when we really wanted them to come to hockey games or come and be with us at Thanksgiving or be with us to help us grow up. We know that they were doing that, though, to create safe places to live, clean water to drink, and languages to speak. So now as a parent, I get it. I see why he did what he did. It's also now that I realize that I, too, am doing a little bit of that work. You know, he and I spoke lots about that in the hospital, and he kept saying to me, take care of yourself. You don't want to be this way, in the point in which he was suffering so deeply from not just the physical trauma of doing this work, but also the nightmares, the hard times at night when he would remember the stories that he would hear, or the hard times that he had on the road. I asked him out one afternoon, we were in St. Boniface Hospital, and I said, hey Dad, why did you do what you did? Like, why did you spend so much time on the road and going to events, giving speeches, and going to court, and doing the AJI and the pediatric inquest or TRC, working in the Senate? Like, you know, I remember one time he phoned me at 2 a.m. at the Senate. He's like, I'm fighting with these conservative senators to try to get Bill 92 passed. All I want to do is sleep. just want to say one thing. Some of those Conservative senators are here today, which tells you about how incredible my father was. I asked him if it was a sense of duty. Was it, I don't know, from when you were in the Air Cadets? My dad was an Air Cadet. It was like one of his proudest moments. I said, is it because you were such a hardworking guy? Because he was Athlete of the Year in 1968, reminded me every single day of my life. I was like, Dad, I got a PhD. He's like, but were you Athlete of the Year in 1968? Was it because of a responsibility, something you picked up in the legal profession, or was it because of the bigger picture? You know, when he often talks about, wrote about it in his book, when he becomes a father to all of us, the 5 children that he has. You know what he told me? He said, just simply, I was called. He told me the story of when his grandmother, Granny Kate, sat him down the day he told her he wasn't going into the priesthood. She refused to sign the form for 3 days and cried all day. After 3 days, he finally came to her again and said, I want to go to university. I don't want to go to the priesthood. Can you sign this form? Because he was young at the time and needed her permission. And she looked me straight in the eyes, he said, and said that I must love the people when they do not love me, even when they do not love me. And that he did. Because he spent a lifetime trying to explain to everybody he met, from us to you, how we should respect one another, how we can learn from one another, and most of all, how we can rebuild our relationships with one another through simple gifts of kindness, honor, and most of all, love. It is love that he saw in all of us, at the best of times and the worst of times. It's love that he tried to show us through the pictures in the sky. So it's love that I learned the most from Dad. Love of our people, the Anishinaabe, but also our Cree and Métis relations. In fact, Indigenous communities and nations everywhere. Dad, first and foremost, loved spending time with children and elders. In fact, I remember many times he was invited to be like the keynote speaker at some big event, to be swanky or something or other, and they would be like phone calls trying to find him, and he'd be in the lobby or the parking lot playing with kids. Or he'd be having coffee at right beside somebody's car, sitting in the parking lot. This one story that's really legendary is he would carry a bubble machine in the back of his truck, and whenever he'd see kids, I don't care if he was like half an hour late for a keynote, he would just pull out the bubble machine and just fire it up. I don't know with Murray Sinclair and bubbles, but he loved spending time with people, especially elders and children. I can remember one time during the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry, Justice Hamilton, who wanted to start the inquiry always on time, they were up north in some First Nation somewhere, and I remember that Justice Hamilton was sitting at the front with his robes on, and they were ready to go to get the different witnesses that came from the community, and Justice Hamilton showed up at 9 a.m., and he waited till 9:30 and 9:45 and 10 a.m., and Justice Hamilton, if you know what he looked like, became redder and redder, just like this carpet right here. And he was getting angrier and angrier because he could hear Justice Sinclair's voice in the hallway in the school where they were at. And he was sitting in the front visiting with elders, joking. And he went up to Justice Sinclair and he said, Justice Sinclair, we need to start the commission, we need to start the witnesses, we need to start the hearings. And Justice Sinclair said, I've already started. Among all things, Dad loved our culture. Of course, I'm speaking about our traditional culture as Midewiwin people and all the ceremonies that I attended and grew up with. He always encouraged us to do that work, to pick up the work, and also to speak Anishinaabe-Mowin. But I'm really talking about the culture of respect, kindness, giving, because those were what he brought to others. It was the kindness that he learned in the lodge amongst Medewin for Anishinaabe people for generations that he then brought to the country. And he asked everyone to give respect and kindness to each other. There's countless stories of Dad, you're going to hear a few from my daughter, talking about the ways that he worked with people from all walks of life, all politics, and all faiths to create a culture of respect for all people. And it was really that love which guided every single story I could tell about my father, from the times that he helped people who had fallen down on the ice, to the times that he helped people to learn about our culture, to the very fact that he helped a commission that had failed for the first time, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and he agreed for one time to leave us yet again and to go and help a country. My father also had a deep love of humor. He loved laughing, he loved storytelling. In fact, his favorite story to tell is when he was appointed to the bench in 1988. He was, as I mentioned, the first Indigenous judge in this province's history. And so he encountered a lot of racism. And one of them was from a fellow judge on his very first week. They had like a luncheon or a coffee, and all the judges were sitting around in the Manitoba bench and sitting at this long table. And one of the judges turned to him, because we remember that Elijah Harper had just been shot that week, and he turned to my father and said, "Well, you know, Murray, the only reason that you were appointed is because we all feel bad. We feel bad about Native people, and you're only here because you're Indigenous." And my dad turned to him and said, "Well, you're only here because you're a white guy." And my dad wasn't chanting prejudice or trying to shame. He was trying to make someone think with humor and with kindness. One of his very famous stories he told everybody was that he would frequently be mistaken for Elijah Harper. And one time in a mall, he was asked to take photographs with a family. And he would sit around and they all said, "Oh, geez." And they brought their families from their cars and they brought them all from the mall and they were circled around. And as they walked away, they said, "This is the greatest day of my life. I met Elijah Harper." And my dad would be mistaken for Elijah Harper so often that, in fact, during a roast, if you look at my social media page, I have a picture from that roast. Elijah Harper gave my dad a t-shirt that says, "I am not Elijah Harper." My dad was mistaken for Elijah Harper so many times, he thought it quite funny that he started to sign autographs as Elijah Harper. But that's the kind of position that my father was in. He had a love of the truth and to try to show you a different side, to challenge you. And on a personal note, one of the hardest things in my life has been to do is to reconcile my feelings with the church. As a young Anishinaabe person, I've experienced a great deal of violence from the church. And it's been hard for me to reconcile my family's deep relationship with the church, the fact that Granny Kate was a strong Catholic, the fact that Dad was expected at one time to become the priest, the fact that we have this deep, enduring relationship with the church. And so when my father was offered an honorary degree from St. John's College, a Catholic institution here in Manitoba, that he was invited to give a speech on that day. And I said to him, "Dad, I think it's best for you not to accept this honorary degree. I think it's best for you not to show that we are complicit." And at that time, back in 2001, that the church was not interested in talking about reconciliation. In fact, churches were in denial about residential schools. They were in denial of the obligations that we have to each other, and the fact that the churches, all churches, Anglican, Catholic, United, have deep, enduring, big footprints in our communities. And my father decided to accept that honorary degree and asked me to come and watch. Thanks, Dad. But when he came off the stage after giving the most remarkable speech I've heard in my life about how important it is that we are together and that reconciliation doesn't have to involve forgiving, but reconciliation has to involve staying in the room together and looking at each other and saying, "What do we do now?" And when he came off the stage, he looked at me and said, "That's why I did that." How little did I know that he would eventually help broker all of us into that relationship 8 years later with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Because, you know, my father's most enduring gift is that he loved this country in all of its complicatedness. He loved this place. He loved treaty. He loved that you would all be here today. He would love that you are talking about reconciliation as not just as he said famously at the first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, that reconciliation will never be a one-day affair. It will be for all time. It will be for all of our lives. And it will be for our children's lives, until finally we can look to each other and treat each other as human beings. On this conclusion, I leave you with the words of my father, who had a fierce, loving, and demanding vision that we can be better. We can be better today, tomorrow, all days. It's something that he gave to me, something he gives to you, something he gives to all of us in the ways that we do our work. Whether it be wherever you are, I hope that you hear my father's words. This is his words from a speech that he gave in 1997, before reconciliation was ever a thing, before we even talked about residential schools openly, before we talked about what it meant to live together. Here's what he said. Ultimately, no matter how we envision it, change rests with you. Those of you who are here and ready to put in the hard work to do it. For change to happen, though, you have to commit personally. Those of you who think this is important, to see this will happen. You have to go back to where you came from, your governments, your workplaces, your homes, and you have to go back Monday morning, send a memo or have a meeting or just sit and visit, but you must make a commitment, professionally and personally. Imagine what a world looks like where all of us have medicines, food, and a safe place to live. Not just a few of us, but all of us, truly. Sometimes you will have to speak about this many times to many people because there are many who may doubt this is possible. But keep trying. Dream. Dream always, because you have been given the gift to do that. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we have a short time to do it. I want to be able to leave this life, this earth, thinking I have moved the conversation along a little bit, and I hope you will commit your life to the same thing. That when you are done, whatever it is that you do, you will feel that you have moved the conversation along a little bit too. I hope these words I have shared with you have given you a little appreciation for how I feel about these things. I do not pretend to have the answers. I sometimes feel I only have questions, but I do want you to know that I have strong feelings about this. A strong feeling about the importance of these issues in this day and age, and also a strong feeling about the important role each and every one of you is going to play, and the resolution of those matters change. Because all of you matter. All of this matters. Our elders matter. Our children matter. You matter. Making this world better will take all of us. Never forget that. Never forget that. I'm seeing my dad with his crooked finger. This would be a crooked finger moment right here. When he goes, when he repeats anything, by the way, especially when he grounds you in grade 11. Here's what he said at the end. Change will happen if the citizens of this country believe and make it happen. So, believe. Then get up. Do something about it. Don't just sit there. Get up. had a little part at the end here, but I'm just going to let that be my end, because Dad would always say, "Get off the stage now, you're doing great." But we're here really to also hear from the grandchildren, and speaking on behalf of the grandchildren, but then also our family, we've asked Sarah Fontaine Sinclair, Niigaanwewidam, his granddaughter, to say a few words.
Bonjour, Niigaanwewidam Indigenous Namagoshendodem. Hello, my name is Sarah, but my Anishinaabe name is Niigaanwewidam, which means the light that dances on the water woman. I first want to say on behalf of my whole family that we feel a lot of gratefulness from all the messages that we've been receiving. We feel a lot of love that are coming from these messages, and we apologize for not being able to respond to all of them, as it's been a hard time for us. But I have a few stories that I want to share, and you might hear them be a little similar to my father's, as even though we wrote them together in the same coffee shop, they're very similar. We have some sort of connection in our minds. I'm sitting in the living room in the Garden City house on the brown leather couch, listening to another one of Musham's stories. I listen attentively, as I learned when I was very young that his stories are always filled with important teachings. He speaks to me about a huge sparkling body of water. He describes an elder watching it from a mountain, surrounded by many animals. He tells me it seems as if all of creation is looking at this sparkling water, until finally a little girl bursts out of the water and dances on top of it. Musham was telling me the story of my name. You see, in my culture, we receive a spirit name that tells us who we are and what we are called to do on this earth. Each name has a story revealed in dreams, and he told me this story until I knew it by heart. Musham made sure I knew where I came from. It was his mission throughout his entire life. He made sure I attended ceremonies where I learned the values I hold today. He shared stories about his childhood and our family. He made sure I saw all parts of Winnipeg, showing me both the beautiful and unjust parts of my hometown. There was one day I was driving with Musham, to Giant Tiger, of course. Musham loved Giant Tiger. And he was telling me a Nanabush story, a trickster character meant to teach us lessons, usually children, when we saw a young man limping across the parking lot. I was in my car seat. Musham told me he was going to talk to this man, and before I knew it, he was helping the man into our car, putting the man's crutches in the back seat, and then we drove him to the bus stop. Musham was always teaching me about kindness and patience. He taught me that helping others is something we should strive for in life. It was something he practiced every single day. I will never forget how grateful that man was. Musham had a powerful gift to make everyone he met feel special and heard. Wherever we went, people would recognize him, and he would have these 10-minute conversations with strangers, making them laugh. In the apartment he lived in his later life, he knew everyone's name as we passed by. He always knew exactly what to talk about with each person, whether it was Star Trek, comedians, or politics. Musham always looked for the good in people, and in them, he saw what our country could grow to be. The moments I shared with my Musham were always cherished, as he wasn't always home. Though it was difficult, my family knew that he had a vision for our nation that he needed to help build. We missed him when he was away, and I wish I had had more time with him as a young girl. But I understand what he was called to do on this earth, and he deeply loved our people. Musham inspired me to be a courageous leader in any way I could. I grew up watching him lead the TRC, and I was inspired and empowered by his strength. He would help me with my speeches for French-speaking competitions over the phone, concours d'oratoire, training me to love public speaking. He taught me that words have power, and to choose my words thoughtfully and carefully. Mushum made sure my time with him was filled with laughter and joy. We all have a funny Mushum story in our family, as you were hearing from my dad. He was always telling jokes to connect with people. I was scrolling through my text with him the other day, and almost all of them were him teasing me or telling me one of his infamous corny jokes. He always told me he came up with those jokes himself, but eventually I found the joke book he used. He never took himself too seriously around me. He'd always ask me every year what I wanted him to be for Halloween, and he'd show up in these fantastic costumes, as I requested, to take me trick-or-treating. Once, it was a bumblebee costume he borrowed from a local high school mascot. Another time, it was a clown. And then another time, he was Shrek. Later, I found out that he proudly shared these costume photos with other senators. We actually had to stop him from handing out copies of these photos. Mushum taught us that laughter is medicine. Every time I went over to Mushum and Cookum's house, Mushum would not only treat me with huge amounts of Dairy Queen and candy, but also so many stories. He'd tell me Nanabush stories during car rides and read picture books at home in these animated voices full of energy. Sometimes he put so much energy into his storytelling, he'd fall asleep mid-sentence. He shared so many of his teachings within stories, always a visionary, like his spirit name described. Mushum always lit up around kids because of this, as he loved sharing stories with them. He saw the future within children and wanted to be a part of guiding them into a better world. He was dedicated to making this place that was once called Kanata a better place for my generation. He always emphasized the importance of education. Even later in life, he remained committed to helping others. He mentored young Indigenous lawyers, wrote a book teaching us on how to guide youth to finding identity through 4 questions, and served as Chancellor of Queen's University, supporting students and their dreams for the future. Mushum called for change in Kanata, asking all of us to be a part of it. But he placed so much of his hope and joy in young people. My family is committed to sharing his stories and continuing his legacy. I'm dedicated to advocating for the vision of a better country that he saw. As young people, we tell the story of a better nation through our actions as we grow into adulthood. When we look to the future, leadership must come from us, and we already know what must be done. Mushum was more than just his work. He was a father, a deeply funny and caring friend, an uncle to many, an always pranking son, a nephew, and a fiercely loving grandfather. In the last few years of his life, I had the chance to spend with him. He shared a story with me at almost every visit, and the story might sound familiar as my dad just told it. I'm sitting on the couch in his apartment about a month after Cookum's passing, when he tells me the story of how he decided to go to university. His grandmother was hesitant to sign the papers. She told him, "You must use this education to help people," and he agreed. Always thinking of others was a teaching he passed on to me, and one I pass on to you. Empathy and kindness balanced with strength and leadership are what we need more in this world. We must think about our community, not just ourselves. Mushum was full of love and laughter, and I hope you carry that teaching with you too. Miigwech and Niigaanwewidam Sinclair to all my relations.
We'd now like to welcome the artists Fawn Wood from Saddle Lake Cree Nation and Dallas Waskahat from Frog Lake First Nation to share their song, Remember Me. Nous invitions maintenant l'artiste Fawn Wood de Saddle Lake Cree Nation et Dallas Waskahat from Frog Lake First Nation qui nous interprète Remember Me.
Niigaanwewidam Sinclair. Fawn Wood Sigaso Niigaanwewidam Sinclair.
Igwa Dallas Waskat Nitsigasun, Haiksagega Notsinia. The first song we're going to sing is a song where we ask Creator to pity us, where we ask Creator to forgive the ones who have hurt us, and to ask Creator to bless all of us and the family.
Now we would like to share a very special song called Remember Me. And we want to dedicate this to Gakyo Aisino Wakuta, all of the people here, and especially his family and his loved ones, and all of the people who his beautiful work and his beautiful life resonates with. Remember me down the road, hand in hand, you and me. Hi-oh, hey-oh, hey, hi-oh, hey. Ah-way, ah-hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. Ah-way, ah-hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. feeling free. Remember me down the road, hand in hand, you and me. Ay hiking and askumt nawaw, sagit nawaw.
We would like to now invite Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Mary Simon, Governor General of Canada, to speak. Je voudrais maintenant inviter Son Excellence la très honorable Mary Simon, Gouverneur général du Canada, à nous adresser la parole.
Unnusakut. Good afternoon. Members of the Sinclair family, Indigenous elders and leaders, survivors, Prime Minister, TRC Commissioner Murray Wilson, Speaker, Your Honor, Premier Kinew, Commissioner Weber, distinguished guests, chers Canadiens et Canadiennes, it is impossible to pay tribute in just a few words to such a prominent leader as the Honorable Murray Sinclair. An intellectual wise enough to defend Indigenous rights and expose systemic injustices and spearhead major investigations into the justice system, yet humble enough to listen and keep learning. Isumatawlaw matan na sibulok tarilak tawut bikhuyalag yutsunilo tamakuninga kamahatta simayupim marialunik nunahakha simayuit sangaya uti hatta simayanginik kamasimatsuni nalatsiaron na sunilo ammalo kinalimatsiaming inutsiango bihaksimayo. A heart brave enough to expose injustices, yet generous enough to make everyone around him feel welcome and important. Je me souviens du jour où j'ai raconté ma propre histoire devant la commission de vérité et réconciliation il y a plusieurs années. When I told my story at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I was very emotional. Senator Sinclair came to me and comforted me with warmth and compassion. People felt a sense of trust and authenticity around him, that they could be who they are without judgment. He was a person of profound wisdom, gained from his academic background and his cultural knowledge. He was held in high regard by all Canadians, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. He understood how connected and interdependent we are all. Il savait qu'il est essentiel de se souvenir de la véritable histoire nationale du Canada pour permettre à nos enfants et petits-enfants d'établir des relations de respect et de collaboration à l'avenir. As the first Indigenous judge appointed in Manitoba and the second appointed in Canada, Senator Sinclair gave hope to many as he opened people's eyes about the mistreatment of Indigenous peoples in the justice system. His Ojibwe name, Mazina Giizhik, Iban, means the one who speaks of pictures in the sky. He was the voice of truth, justice, and healing. As head commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he leaves behind an invaluable legacy of bringing to light the stories of thousands of residential school survivors. En offrant une tribune nationale aux histoires des survivants, il a honoré leur dignité devant toute la population canadienne. This was a transformative contribution and a great historical moment. I had the absolute privilege of being named as an honorary witness to this historic commission. The Honorable Murray Sinclair challenges all of us to be truthful, to honor the beauty and importance of Indigenous cultures, languages, oral histories, Indigenous knowledge, and governance systems. To learn from the past and work together towards a more equitable future. His legacy is beyond words. Sa profonde influence sur le processus de réconciliation au Canada nous inspirera longtemps dans l'avenir. His loss is an immeasurable sorrow for our country and for the countless lives he touched. On behalf of all Canadians, Whit and I offer our deepest condolences to the Sinclair family, who grieve the loss of a beloved father and a grandfather. As a nation, let us honor his legacy by continuing our journey towards reconciliation. He will be remembered.
We now welcome the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister. Nope. We now welcome the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to share remarks on behalf of the Government of Canada. Nous invitons maintenant le Très Honorable Justin Trudeau, Premier ministre du Canada, à nous adresser la parole au nom du gouvernement du Canada.
Bonjour, good afternoon. Thank you, Chief Blue Sky, for starting us in a good way. As we are today, life sometimes brings together people in just the right moments. And my first official event with Murray was certainly one of those. It was 9 years ago, and I was maybe a month into the job of Prime Minister, very much feeling the weight of the responsibility the Canadians had just entrusted in me. Especially because that first meeting was on a day of great consequence for this country, the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report that Murray led. It was a culmination of years of painstaking work, reliving trauma, demanding action, forging a new, better path forward. Murray and I spoke that day and had a heartfelt, serious, and enlightening conversation, the first of many that would follow over the years. Une discussion avec Murray, c'était toujours un moment exceptionnel, et pas juste grâce à sa sagesse inouïe, mais aussi grâce à sa patience. Avant de tirer ses conclusions, Il écoutait toutes les voix, toutes les opinions, toujours avec patience et ouverture. Murray always thoughtfully listened, even when he disagreed, and he did so with his signature smile. A smile I'd get to know well over the course of many, many meetings and discussions. A smile that would come every time he'd gently but firmly point out where I might be wrong. Fill in an element that I hadn't thought of, but really should have. Or, like a real teacher, encouraged me to just put a little more work into my proposed solution. But always with that smile. Over the years, he became to me a wise teacher, a trusted confidant, an insightful elder, a mushum, and above all, a friend who challenged me to always do better. But that smile always stuck with me because it was emblematic of exactly who he was. Murray grew up in an era of profound injustice. It was only by the time he turned 9 that First Nations were allowed to vote without giving up status. He was 46 when the last residential school closed. He bore witness to the systemic discrimination that Indigenous peoples faced at the hands of law enforcement in his home of Manitoba and across Canada. He could have easily said that this country was irredeemable or that it was not worth the fight. But that just wasn't Murray. An eternal optimist, he believed in people. He believed that while it would entail hard work and tough conversations, it was possible to change hearts and minds. And above all, he believed something that resonates so deeply with me as a former teacher, that while education got us into this mess, education will get us out of it. He believed that the answer to building a better future lies in education, and especially in our youth, from coast to coast to coast. Il comprenait que changer les choses, ça n'arrive pas en claquant les doigts. He knew that progress is only made when you meet people where they're at and bring them along. When you encourage them to open their mind, think critically, and ask tough questions about who we are. That's what Murray believed, and that's who Murray was. While Murray has passed on to the spirit world, his warmth, his generosity, his optimism, and his smile is very much with us today. Murray has brought us together. He's brought our whole country together with a frank and true understanding, not only of our history, but of the journey of reconciliation on which we have all embarked. With perseverance, an unwavering belief in progress, and proudly embodying who he was, an Anishinaabe and a Manitoban, Murray changed this country for the better. En ses 73 ans, Murray a transformé le Canada. Grâce à lui, nous avons pris conscience de notre passé et des injustices qui persistent. Nous célébrons l'histoire, les cultures autochtones et l'identité autochtone comme jamais auparavant. Et nous nous sommes ouverts au changement, au vrai changement, au changement profond et parfois douloureux que nous devons tous entamer. As I said at the beginning, life is a way of bringing people together at just the right moments. And in that first meeting, and during the many encounters I had thereafter, the many deep, important, but also fun and light conversations, he continually impressed upon me that reconciliation is not about checking off 94 boxes. It's an ongoing, continuous, and deeply ambitious process. Murray gave us the blueprint, the foundation, the tools to pursue reconciliation, and now it is up to all of us, governments, Indigenous peoples, and non-Indigenous people, to keep doing the work with everything he gave us. Merci beaucoup, Murray. Thank you all for remembering him today.
Why am I here? What is my purpose in life? My purpose in life is in my name, the name that I was given. Charged with the responsibility to unveil what Canada, as a government and as a nation, had done to and with the children of Indigenous people and societies since Confederation. We have to continue our focused way of looking at this history, looking at what it is that the issues are, and doing what we can to uncover them. We must work with survivors of the residential schools, survivors of the 60s scoop, survivors of the justice system, survivors of the day schools, all of those who have gone through this experience. And that includes the families of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We did this for the children who were taken away and for the parents who were left behind to cry for them. We did this for the children of today who needed to know where and what and why things had occurred. We must teach our children not only how to be good, strong Anishinaabe children, and to be true to their traditions, true to their teachings, true to themselves, and true to the teachings that were intended for them to live by when they were placed upon this earth. So this place is a place of reconciliation, I hope. It's a place where we can begin to renew those relationships in a good way, where we can establish friendships in a good way. Because reconciliation really does turn on a very simple concept, and it is that I want to be your friend, and I want you to be mine. And so that if we are friends together as we grow up, we will always be friends. And that means that our children can be friends, and that they can have a good relationship too. It was the name that the spirit that was placed in me by the Creator carried when he came here. And when that spirit arrived, he brought with it all of those responsibilities that go with that name. And those responsibilities include understanding what's going on in the world and helping other people understand what's going on in the world. Mazina Giizhik, the one who speaks of pictures in the sky.
We welcome Morgan Grace, a Red River Métis fiddler from East Selkirk, accompanied by Tom Dudium from Richard, Manitoba, to share Teardrop. Nous invitions Morgan Grace, une violoniste métisse de la Rivière-Rouge de East Selkirk, à partager avec Tom Dudium, à partager Teardrop.
I know that Dad would be very happy there is such a strong musical presence, because a lot of you might know this, but Dad was a bit of a rocker. It's a famous story of he was having surgery, and so he was on painkillers, very heavy, and he was in the living room, and he had struggles at nighttime because he would be in a lot of pain, and so he would get up and he would take a lot of painkillers, and he'd go sit in the living room, and he'd put on Pink Floyd at full blast, which, so a lot of you might not know that. Murray Sinclair is a Pink Floyd lover. And so of course Dad passes, and we're preparing for our ceremony that we had for 4 days, which was a very hard but also very beautiful ceremony. And then at the end, we've been working with an amazing person who's been helping our family, both with our mom passing away just a few months ago, and then of course with Dad, Curtis Monkman, who is somewhere here. So please give Curtis a big round of applause for who's Now, unfortunately, Curtis, you may now just get avalanched with, because I'm going to say what you did for Dad. And as I mentioned before, Dad was a bit of a rocker. And so he did something crazy at the age of 70. He got his motorcycle license. Like, who does that? Right? Who does that? And we're all like, as children, we were like, Dad, what the heck are you doing? And so he would drive, and he bought himself a Spider because he couldn't hold up the motorcycle anymore. He was too weak. So a Spider is like 2 wheels in the front, 1 wheel in the back, and he would drive around Lockport and St. Andrews, if those of you that are here, and he'd always wear his orange Every Child Matters hoodie. And so one day he was at the lights, stoplight in Lockport, and a child was in the car beside him, and he was standing there with his motorcycle revving it because like he was so proud of himself. And the child turned to him and said, "Are you a pumpkin?" So he went out and got an orange helmet. Like, that's how proud he was that he got called a pumpkin, the floating pumpkin of Lockport. So that's my father. But he would be so happy there's such a powerful musical presence here today, so he just is so proud. There are so many people that helped along the way, and I'm going to forget people, but I just want to give us very special recognition. I wrote a column about it just because it was so important and powerful to me, also to the family. Mitch Bourbonniere, which is just over here, and OPK for doing the fire for us, and Omar Siddiqui as well. There's many people that helped with that fire, but Mitch, when I called at 3 in the morning, he was right there for me, answered the phone, and so that's the kind of guy that he is. Another really cool, amazing person who's been a big support of our family, but he's also been somebody who's been there for us a lot over the past few years, especially since not only her time as an MP, but then also now as the Lieutenant Governor of Manitoba, is the Honorable Anita Neville, who Dad frequently joked around with and visited, and so just a big miigwech, and thanks for coming. We're going to invite her to stage to say a few words. So.
Niigaan, family members, distinguished guests, fellow Manitobans, family and friends of a kind, bold, brave, and inspiring man. It's an honor to join you today in memory and celebration of a life spent in service. As Lieutenant Governor of Manitoba, I join you in mourning Murray Sinclair and taking this opportunity to reaffirm a commitment to the ideas and actions he stood for. Here at the Canada Life Centre and at gathering places across the land, as we heard earlier, it has become the custom to begin gatherings with an acknowledgement that we are coming together on treaty territory and on ancestral and present-day land of Indigenous people. The fact that such acknowledgements have now become both customary and thoughtful is in no small part attributable to Murray Sinclair's lifelong commitment to educating Canadians. As we heard from the Prime Minister, many of us are familiar with his oft-quoted comment, "Education is what got us into this mess, and education will get us out of it." And it was indeed through education, both formal and informal, that my life intersected with Murray Sinclair. I had the very good fortune to know both Murray and his late wife, Catherine, for many years. Catherine and I worked together in the 1980s in a program called the Winnipeg Core Area Initiative, a program designed to train many who were frequently left behind, forgotten, or ignored. Given that this was a new program, we suddenly found ourselves scrambling as we needed a keynote speaker for our first graduation ceremony. And it just happened that we had a line on Manitoba's brand new first Indigenous judge. For the graduates that day, it was inspirational. For me, it was the start of an enduring friendship. Just like the students of that program over 3 decades ago, and just like countless other Canadians, I learned a great deal from this exceptional man. We heard about the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry here in Manitoba. Through that, he educated us all about systemic inequalities and the interconnected issues affecting education, family, community, and the justice system. At that time, I happened to be the chair of a task force on race relations in the Winnipeg School Board, in the Winnipeg school system. I saw firsthand his steadfast commitment to bring matters of Indigenous education to the forefront. His words and proceedings of his inquiry were highly and unexpectedly influential on the recommendations of the task force and ultimately on the Winnipeg School Division. As we all know, when he led the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he brought the stories and the legacies of countless residential school survivors to local and national attention in a way that compelled Canada to listen and to learn. And in all his other works before and since, we've heard many times he brought warmth, he brought kindness, he brought generosity of spirit to his mission of public education. When I became Lieutenant Governor of Manitoba, I sought his advice on what I, as a representative of the Crown, could best do to honor my commitment to make reconciliation a part of my mandate. We met. He was extremely generous with his time. He was thoughtful and wise in his counsel. His teachings and advice have in fact been a catalyst for much of what our office has undertaken, and for that I will be forever grateful. We still have a lot to learn as individuals and as a province and as a country. But as we've heard, it's very much thanks to Murray Sinclair that we are taking steps to work in partnership to reveal and redress past wrongs in the spirit of truth and collaboration. To his family, of whom he was so proud and he loved so dearly, and to all who knew and loved Murray Sinclair, I offer my deepest condolences. May we all continue to honor his memory and his legacy by walking together on our path to reconciliation. And as it is said in my faith tradition, may his memory be for a blessing. Thank you, merci, miigwech, and shalom.
We now welcome Acting Grand Chief Betsy Kennedy from War Lake First Nation to share some words on behalf of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Nous invitions la grande chef par intérim, Betsy Kennedy, de War Lake First Nation, à nous partager quelques mots au nom de l'Assemblée des chefs du Manitoba.
Good afternoon. On behalf of my community and the 62 First Nations of Manitoba, I want to let you know that we are in a deep loss and a deep sense of gratitude. I am honored to be here today on behalf of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. I want to thank our elder for the prayer and the songs, and many of our guests that are here today. I extend our condolences to his 5 children and his grandchildren, his immediate and extended family, and all those he called relatives and who loved him immensely. We gather today to celebrate the remarkable life of a man who dedicated so much of his heart and energy and intellect to justice, truth, and healing. I was looking at the video just now and listening to the words of others before me. And I was just almost brought to tears when they talked about the parents crying as their children were taken. Because I remember my parents, my mother, going through that exact same thing as a 5-year-old child. And it does hit me hard today. And when Murray first started the Truth and Reconciliation, I thought, this is where we can heal. Survivors, parents, and children. You know, we have gone through so much. And Murray helped us continue on to let our words be known. And he spoke for us. To know he was to witness a commitment, not only to law, but to something much greater, a restoration of dignity, the reclamation of truth, and pursuit of reconciliation for Indigenous people across this land. I remember an interview he had done where he spoke about how we can quit law. He would almost quit law because he was unsure how you could become a lawyer and an Indian at the same time, how the racism and discrimination was difficult to endure. He understood the pain of what our people have endured since this land was named Canada. It is the reason he understood the pain we carry as survivors of residential school. And he helped us give voice to that pain, that silence, and that loss in a way that no one had before. When I first heard the passing of Murray Sinclair, I was asked, what do you remember about him the most? You know, he was always a very giving person and caring. I know when I met him, most times he would try and make you smile and laugh. And he was always quiet in his words, but he had strength to do something about it. That's who I know Murray was. Through the work of Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Murray Sinclair changed the course of history in Canada. With grace and integrity, he led the commission through years of difficult testimony, challenging conversation, and countless hours of listening to the stories of survivors. Stories that have been buried and hidden from view. His leadership was not just about asking for the truth, but demanding it. He was steadfast, he was patient, and above all, he was compassionate. For me, and for so many residential school survivors, the TRC was a turning point of an opportunity for our truths to be heard and validated. It gave us a platform not only to speak, but to be listened to by the country and the world. And Murray Sinclair stood as our guide, our protector, and our voice. One who fought for us, fought for justice, and most importantly, fought for our healing. He never looked down on us. He looked with us and alongside of us. He understood that reconciliation was not just words, but it is about action, responsibility, and courage. We are all forever indebted to him for his tireless work in shining a shining light on the truth of residential schools and its impacts, but also with his deep belief in possibility of a better future. He showed us that even in our darkest times, there's always a path toward healing, and it is through understanding, compassion, and justice that we can walk that path together. Murray Sinclair gave us something far greater than apology or a report. He gave us the courage to stand tall in our truth, to claim our rightful place in this country, to believe that reconciliation is not a distant dream, but a collective responsibility. On a personal level, I cannot overstate that Murray's work and his friendship had meant to me as a survivor, as a leader in my community. His work gave me strength, and his kindness gave me hope, and I will always be thankful. We mourn the loss of a great man, but we also celebrate his life, a life that has left a mark on our communities and people everywhere in this country. In closing, I was reminded of something Murray posted on Facebook, and I do have Facebook too. I think it sums up his life. At a certain point in one person's life, you enter what I call the swamp years, where the water around you starts to deepen and the ground beneath you begins to shift, and the earth becomes invisible, and each step represents an unknown risk. You can become afraid to move, but you cannot stand still. Too much remains to be done. You cannot leave a life unfinished. Those who are wise refocus on things that are important to you and finish them. And that was Murray, never standing still. We send our condolences to family and to Canada for a man that we have lost. and that hopes and his hope that we work together and bring us reconciliation. Murray, we thank you from the depths of our hearts, your work, your leadership, and your unwavering support to all of us will never be forgotten. Thank you, Niigaanwewidam.
Thank you, Grand Chief. Merci, Grand Chief. From the home community of Murray Sinclair, Peguis First Nation, please welcome the artist William Prince. De la communauté natale de Murray Sinclair, Peguis First Nation, accueillons l'artiste William Prince.
Greetings, everyone. Nice to be. Thank you. I was saying to Niigaan just now, after an incredible lifetime, it's nice to be here for Murray for a change. You know, I too was called. I was called to sing songs and share in a way that my dad did and many other First Nations people did before me. And I think it's important to know that I have a son that I'm trying to raise and show the light and inspire to be much like the gentleman we've been hearing about here today. And it's very encouraging to know that the work will continue and that we're all here celebrating in a way, and truly honored. This may be the honor of my life to be here with you all today as family, as friends, celebrating the work of this great person. And thank you to the family. Thank you to Peguis First Nation. Thank you, Murray Sinclair, for this. May your love be pure like an eagle, wisdom be under every stone you turn. Let truth be a key to freedom and bind you to the path that holds the light. We're the reason that there's 7 sins and teachings. Each one can wait the other out. Life is 2 wolves, good and evil. Who you feeding? Tell me, are you in or are you out? Oh, be honest and honor each other. Don't make a promise that you'll have to break. Have forgiveness when there's only hatred. Stand up for goodness sake. May your mind be vast like the ocean. Salvage the lesson from each storm you survive, and let honesty lead you across the sea. Forever keep you on the current that carries the light. 'Cause in this world that's growing older faster, humility will keep your spirit young. When you're looking far into the future, don't forget how far you've already come. Ooh, 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 ooh. And may your strength be abundant, everlasting. Joy bring peace to your life. Surrender your heart to the 7. Keep to the path that holds the light. Let respect be the law by which you're driven. 'cause respect, it gets earned, it ain't given. To our brothers and sisters born with two spirits, may we all find the courage to reconcile. 'Cause in this world that's growing older faster, humility will keep your spirit young. When you're looking far into the future, don't forget how far you've already come. Ooh, 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 ooh. Don't be shy now. Ooh, we're a family when we sing. Ooh. May your love be pure like an eagle, wisdom be under every stone you turn. Let truth be a key to freedom and bind you to the path that holds, to the path that holds, to the path that holds the light. Thank you to the Honorable Murray Sinclair. Thank you, everyone.
I was just asking Will. Will's a good friend of mine, but also I think a friend of many of us, and is really lucky that he's in town and able to travel, and also able to be with us today. But I was just had this sort of epiphanic moment where Will's great uncle is Tommy Prince, and Tommy Prince, of course, applaud. Of course, remarkable, amazing sergeant, hero for many of us, but he was also my grandfather's best friend. And they used to take care of each other when they were both struggling on the streets, just a few streets over from here. And I was thinking about what the two of them must be thinking about, seeing all the work that's been done now. And it's a really beautiful moment. So miigwech Will for that. I forgot to tell you the Curtis story. So, because I got so excited and wrapped up. And so Curtis Monkman, incredible support for our family. But one of my dad's dreams has been to be a motorcycle guy, right? And so there he is. He's late in his life. He doesn't get a chance to really become as much motorcycling as he had hoped. And when he passed away, when he started that journey, Curtis offered to this very special service that he does, which is to have a Harley escort the coffin, the remains to the cemetery. And so my dad was escorted by a group of Harley motorcycles around the perimeter. To Pink Floyd, with Pink Floyd screaming on the speakers. And that's how my dad's vessel was taken back to the earth, which is remarkable. I've only got a few more speakers here. I just want to make sure that we recognize a few people. Someone who answered the phone at the early morning hours on the day in which we started this process, but has also been a big support for our family. I don't know if some of you know, but my father was honored here in front of 15,000 people, and that was done by the Winnipeg Jets and Mark Chipman and their liaison and a great brother of mine, Kevin Chief. So please give them a big round of applause for offering this space for us. And of course, I would be remiss then to say that we've spent a lot of time as a family in the hospital. And the heroic work that the people at St. Boniface Hospital do for all of us. We should hold a parade, and I have the right people to tell them to do it. We should hold a parade for healthcare staff every single day. And St. Boniface, the 5th floor, and the ICU, especially Bernadette, the nurse, who was there for us the entire time. Not enough nice things can be said about the incredible doctors, nurses, and the fact that they held our hands, they let us cry, they were there for us for every step of the way. So just big miigwech, and also all the supports at Health Science Center as well for your help with Dad during the various stages, but then also with Mom. So there's something special that my dad left for all of us, and I think that one of the great gifts that I have of being at the University of Manitoba is that I get to see this place, and I get to see this place which really started as a spark, literally with an opening fire, which has now turned into this beautiful archive and building and a legacy in which my dad is very, very proud of. And particularly one of his proudest moments was out at what's formerly the Southwoods Golf Course, I think it was called. And there's the breaking ground of what will eventually become the brand new National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, which is one of the most important calls to action where survivors can have their stories archived. Where public education and research into residential schools will take place. And Rai Moran, who did incredible work to get that building started, that center started, and now my dad's very close friend and also supporter for a long time, in fact, worked for him and has seen the good, the bad, the great, the ugly out of all the family. In fact, we used to sort of say, Stephanie, you are one of our family members because you've been yelled at by all of us at some point or other. And so I want to invite the Executive Director of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, Stephanie Scott. There you are. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour, good afternoon. Miskwa Nakwadakwe, Indigenous, Wabashishi Dodem. My spirit name is Red Cloud Woman, and I'm of the Martin clan. My family is from the Roseau River, Anishinaabe First Nation. I acknowledge Treaty 1 territory where I was born, homeland of the Red River Métis, and home to many Inuit. I am the Executive Director of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, and prior to that, I worked with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, where I had the privilege and honor to work closely with Senator Sinclair. I say miigwech to the family of Mazina Giizhik, Gibon, and extending this blessing to share and celebrate your dad, your uncle, your mushum, and as a friend to so many of us, not only here today, but around the world. As we've heard, Murray Sinclair has had an incredible career as a chair of the TRC, a judge, a senator, and most importantly, a truth teller, a justice seeker, and a healer. While his work speaks to the leader that he was also a leader to many of us in a personal way, a generous way, and a kind way. Throughout the years that I worked with him at the TRC and at the NCTR, where he served as a special advisor and elder, I was always struck by the generosity he demonstrated. He shared kindness and laughter and teased those he loved. If you were on the end of a bad dad joke and the teasing was merciless, you knew he cared for you. And for some of us, we also got the teachings and multiple lessons from Murray with his stern words. It felt like a blow to the heart. It could be intimidating, but also gentle at the same time. His spirit was strong. He had an incredible mind that was photographic in nature. He liked to collect items and papers and records, and there were thousands upon thousands of pages in his office. He could close his eyes, look into his brain Rolodex, and direct me to a file in the multiple stacks, and that file was always exactly where he said it would be. Senator Sinclair loved his family, survivors, and community, and he loved children. His wish was for missing children to return to their loved ones in their communities because every child truly mattered to him. Wherever Senator Sinclair went, people stopped to talk with him all the time from all walks of life, and he would listen. If they were hungry, he would buy them lunch. I saw him give his jacket away a few times to those who were cold. When my sister was ill, he took the time to call her to help give her strength. The memory of her face when she heard, "Hello, it's Murray Sinclair," will stay with me forever. That's the kind of man he was. Murray held so much knowledge, and he was an anchor for so many people in our community. There are many examples of this, but one that stays with me is the water walk that he helped his late wife, Catherine Morrisseau Sinclair, with. The water walk was a powerful demonstration of commitment to realizing our human rights, that water is sacred and it has its own spirit. That walk was a sign of Murray and Catherine's combined strength and power to make positive change here on Turtle Island. In his work for the TRC, he let us know that we had the ability to change what needed to be changed for the survivors, their families, and all our nations. He had two other commissioners, Wilton Littlechild and Marie Wilson, all of whom listened to thousands of survivor statements from dawn till dusk, for several years routinely putting in 15 to 16 hours a day across this land. I know all that he gave to this world came at a personal cost. He would often work late into the night when he worked at the TRC, and sometimes I would come into his office and he would be resting. I would have to gently suggest to him it was time to go home. His never-ending commitment to giving to others has made such a difference in achieving truth in the hopes of reconciliation and healing for so many of us. Again, I say miigwech to all the family for sharing Mazina Giizhik Gibbon with us all these years. Miigwech to the Creator for gifting him to us, a Mishomis who did so much for so many in his physical time on earth. While his passing leaves a gaping hole in our hearts, the legacy he leaves us with will live on through all of us, and we need to celebrate and honor his life. I am grateful for his wisdom, counsel, and friendship over the years. May joy continue to bless Justice Sinclair and his beloved Catherine in the spirit world as our ancestors watching over all of us. I say miigwech, thank you.
Please welcome the Honorable Michelle Obanswin from Odanak First Nation, Judge of the Supreme Court of Canada. Nous invitions maintenant l'Honorable Michelle Obanswin, juge de la Cour suprême du Canada, pour nous adresser la parole.
Kwai Nidobak, bonjour amis, hello friends. Nadeliwizi misalis Obansawin, Nodzawi Odanak, Wabanake Galnoba Taplawinonia, Udoza Richard Tadzian. I start off by introducing myself as per our tradition. I am Michelle Obanswin, a proud Abenaki member of Odanak First Nation, and also a Turtle Society member. I am the daughter of Richard and Zian. I wish to thank Murray's family for inviting me to speak to you today. Chimigwich. It is a great honor for me to be here with you all. Although my comments will be brief, they are heartfelt. Our life is a journey, and we must travel through it with determination and courage. On this journey, there are people who cross our paths and leave an undeniable, lasting impression. Murray is definitely one of those individuals. Avant de le rencontrer, j'en avais entendu grandement parler. Mais je dois vous dire, lors de ma première rencontre avec lui, je me suis sentie tellement inspirée et souvent j'étais bouche bée. I was in awe of Murray Sinclair. I knew from the very first time that I spoke to him, I was talking to someone with great wisdom. He embodied the spirit of resilience, compassion, and unwavering commitment to the betterment of Indigenous peoples in Canada. My journey to the Supreme Court involved the support of many, but importantly, Murray was a guiding light. He provided me with thoughtful advice and constantly inspired me to be better. For my people, the turtle has much symbolism. The turtle represents protection, wisdom, truth, and longevity. I feel Murray was also part of our turtle society. Protection. Murray was highly protective of his family, his values, and all Indigenous people in Canada. Wisdom. For all of you who have encountered Murray in the past, and if you were fortunate enough to spend time with him, you could without a doubt sense how wise he was. He listened to all with great empathy and inspired those around him to strive for a future where every voice is heard and valued. Truth. At times, Murray was unwavering. He believed in truth, and his work on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada demonstrated his belief in that principle. Longevity. Murray's time with us was too short. However, his longevity will ensure that he is never forgotten and will be a hallmark in Canadian history. I will always be grateful for the impact Murray has had on my life. At every opportunity that I have to speak about him and his legacy, I will do so proudly because Murray was a good friend and a great mentor to me. As I have often said, I have stood on the shoulders of giants, and Murray was one of the greatest. I know that his journey is not over since he touched so many of us here today. So I ask you all, let's honor Murray by committing ourselves to his great work. Let us carry forward his teachings, compassion, and respect for others. In honoring him today, we celebrate not just a leader, but a friend, a mentor, a relative, and a cherished member of our community. Again, I am grateful to have been with you to share this day with regard to our great friend, Mazina Giizhik Iban, for his life. Merci. Thank you very much. Uliuni, Ulina Nawal Mazi. Take good care of yourselves and all those around you. Merci.
We would now like to welcome National Chief Cindy Woodhouse from Pinemutang First Nation to share some words on behalf of the Assembly of First Nations. Accueillons maintenant le chef national Cindy Woodhouse de Pinemutang First Nation à nous partager quelques mots au nom de l'Assemblée des Premières Nations.
Anin, bonjour. Hoping that asking our chiefs, and we've got chiefs here from coast to coast to coast, and I want to welcome them to the stage with me. Apachikachinendam akanakabijayano manungum. On behalf of the Assembly of First Nations, and of course all our many First Nations from coast to coast to coast that are here, we offer our condolences, our love and deep respect to the family of the Honorable Murray Sinclair, a proud Anishinaabe and a member of the Peguis First Nations. All First Nations are greatly saddened by his passing, and you've seen it everywhere this week. And it's a testament to our love for him as First Nations people, and that we're all here together, united today. We are all incredibly grateful that Justice Sinclair dedicated his life to fight for us so brilliantly. Justice Sinclair never lost sight of our people, their experiences and their suffering. He fought especially hard for the most vulnerable of our people. He fought for those unjustly locked away and those killed and forgotten by authorities. He fought for the children taken and separated from their parents. He fought for the children in unmarked graves all across this country who disappeared in the so-called residential school system. He fought for women like Helen Betty Osborne, whose murders were swept away by others. We could always count on Justice Sinclair to be relentless and thorough in his quest for justice for absolutely everyone. As a First Nations woman growing up in this country, and many of us that are here, we feel so grateful that we were able to cross paths with him. Many of us are younger leaders, and we have to continue that work together. Justice Sinclair gave us hope, and he still does as we stand here today in his shadow. At every step of his professional career, Mazina Giizhik carried out exceptional work for First Nations in Manitoba, across Canada, and for all First Nations people. As a lawyer, as a judge, as a storyteller of hard truth, Murray Sinclair courageously worked within a legal system hostile to First Nations, with the express purpose of changing it. Murray Sinclair did more than expose and diagnose inequities in the Canadian legal system. He pointed out exactly what needed to change. He showed us action to take to protect all Indigenous women, men, and children from discrimination. As a co-chair of the Manitoba Aboriginal Justice Inquiry in the 90s, he exposed the realities of racism and discrimination in policing and in the justice system. As chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, Justice Sinclair patiently explained to all Canadians what they needed to know about the legacy and ongoing impacts of the racist Indian residential school system. With his fellow commissioners, he provided a place for survivors to tell their stories, and he did not stop there. He reminded us all of our collective duty to identify and honor the children who disappeared and died in those institutions. As a judge and a senator, we know Murray Sinclair changed hearts and minds, and in the corridors of power, provincially and federally. There are not really words to reflect the positive impact of his life's work. More than anything else, though, I am struck, and we are struck by the fact that whenever First Nations needed him to take on seemingly impossible tasks, Mr. Sinclair responded. He answered the call of duty over and over. Each and every time he delivered brilliantly and compassionately as only he could. As National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, we understand and accept our responsibility to keep that legacy alive, as we all do standing here, to keep answering the call of duty for our people, to keep fighting for those calls to action, to keep encouraging Canadians to keep their hearts open to the growth and healing that can come with truth and reconciliation, just like he did. So on behalf of all First Nations, we thank you, Mazina Giizhik, Chimi Gwech, from the bottom of our hearts and spirits. You have earned a well-deserved rest. We love you, and we will never forget your sacrifice and all that you have accomplished for all of us. And we must do our best to carry on your good work. Chimi Gwech Gigiabman Minawa Mina. Thank you.
For a second performance, we welcome back Morgan Grace and Tom Dutiam. Nous invitons à nouveau Morgan Grace et Tom Dutiam pour jouer le valse Météwashing.
We want to thank you for being here all afternoon. We've got one more speaker left and then a very special song that'll be shared. We're going to start to wrap up this afternoon by talking a little bit about family and how important family was to Dad, because he was a person who would frequently adopt and many people along the way, and people who became very close members of our family. But of course, there is the beginning, the many families that Dad are a part of, which include a very lengthy list of the Morisseau family, the Fleury family, the Shrupka family, the Mistowis, the Thomases, the Nicoshays, the Peebles, the Gibsons, the McCorsters, and of course, all of my Sinclair relations. Many of them are all here today. So I really want to just say a huge miigwech to all of you for coming and supporting us, particularly during this time. But there are many other people who have supported us as well, who we have joined with, my father, particularly Natasha, Tom, Laver, everyone at Bergen Gardens, all of you. You have been an incredible support and love for us. Senator Kim Pate, I cannot say thanks enough for taking care of Sarah, getting her on time to the plane. Sarah thinks that when you have to be there when the plane takes off. That's how she thinks about it. So she hates it. I'm in so much trouble now. So, some of you may not know this, but my father was adopted by Eleanor Olson from Peguis, and the Olson family are our family. We send our tremendous love to you. We know that you are also hurting at this time. There's one special person who is the only person that makes me choke up whenever I talk about him, but it's my dad's best friend, who is, I'm not sure if they're here, but my Uncle B, Jim Beattie, and his wife Della, who you have been there for us, you have stood beside us, and you have cared for us no matter what. And for years and years and years, including being Dad's best man, you have cared for us and given us love. So we say miigwech and thank you to you. Please join me in saying a miigwech and thanks to all those and anyone else who I've forgotten. So. Someone who's also been a very close member of our family and has been in many ways adopted in. In fact, today we had a very beautiful ceremony just before we started because he consistently and continually has been there for us, but not just for us. There is a very short list of people who Dad wanted to spend his final moments with. And when we asked him, when we said, it's time to start to look at who it is that you would like to share your time with. Of course, there was us. Of course, there was his sister, Auntie Diane. Of course, there was many people who he invited and wanted to spend time with. But in particular, it was Wab Kinew. Wab Kinew has been there for my father for many, many years, including at the time in which he lost his own father, and which my father stepped in and supported him for many years. And when Wab Kinew was sworn in at the new Manitoba government just over a year ago, he presided in that swearing-in ceremony and said that it was one of the proudest moments of his life and something he had never thought he would see before, which is the first First Nations premier of a Canadian province. On that day, he called that moment Manitoba's true act of reconciliation. That's his words. And I would like to invite someone who is in many ways been not just a family member and a brother to those of us, my sisters, but also for those of us in our family. He was there the night that Dad began his journey. He spent time with Dad for the weeks before, and he supported my 4 sisters who have been there and are really the leaders of our family and deserve a special round of applause before we hear from Wab. Giizhik, Dene, Misko, and Giizhik. Absolutely. It is my sisters who are the strength and the spine of all of us. So without any further ado, I want to invite someone who has been very kind and generous, not just with all of us, but has helped organize all of today to make sure that we could be here together to celebrate the life of my dad, Premier Wab Kinew.
Ya hey ya eh ya ya hey ya eh ya ya eh ya ya hey hey ya eh ya ya hey ya eh ya ya hey ya eh ya ya oh hey ya hey ya eh ya ya hey ya eh ya ya oh hey oh. That is my dad's death song. My dad's name was Tabasanakut Ibun. As a boy in St. Mary's Residential School, they stripped him of that name and they cut his long hair short. Today, my youngest child is named Tabasanakut. And before we send him to school, Lisa or I, we braid his long hair. These are the kind of tender moments that Anishinaabe children now get to spend with their parents. And to honor this era, we recently held an event at the Manitoba legislature called Boys with Braids. Went to visit Murray Sinclair a few days later, and I told him about it. And he said that when he was a young lawyer, one of his colleagues at the courthouse pulled his braid, attempting humor. We know that Murray had many stories like this, and still he persisted. Now, I think Murray pushed on, in spite of experiences like the hair pulling, because he saw within us, as Manitobans and as Canadians, the potential that we would push beyond the racism that he experienced and embrace our better nature. And so visiting with him that day, I was happy to tell Murray that at the end of the Boys with Braids event, our youngest, Tabasanakwit, who proudly carries that name that they tried to strip from his grandfather, who proudly wears his hair long, he asked to speak after me on the steps of the Manitoba legislature. So when I handed the mic to our 6-year-old boy, he addressed a large crowd of his peers. And he said 3 simple words: every child matters. C'est le Canada dans lequel grandissent nos enfants et nos petits-enfants. Et c'est le Canada que Murray Sinclair a contribué à bâtir, où chaque enfant compte. Murray was there for every step of my political journey, from the moments when I felt like giving up to the moments when I felt most humbled to lead our province. 6 years ago, I told Murray that I was thinking of quitting politics, that I thought I could do more good on the outside of the legislature than inside it. I was feeling burnt out. The idea of winning an election seemed so far away. Murray Sinclair sat at my kitchen table, and he explained to me how he once felt the same way as a young judge, how he'd thought of quitting, that he thought maybe he'd do more as a lawyer and an activist. But instead, he stayed true to his vision, and it was all worth it, he said. And I thought of everything that he's been able to do since then that we've heard articulated so eloquently today: the inquiries, the inquests, the Senate, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Murray gave me the encouragement to stay on through another term in opposition. As a retired judge, he also had the authority to preside over our swearing-in ceremony. And on that beautiful autumn day 1 year ago, he sat on stage with us, beaming, presiding spiritually and physically as ministers, one at a time, came up to take their oath of office. Consecrated by a traditional pipe, Murray swore me in as the 25th Premier of Manitoba. And on that day, he shared those words with us that he shared with so many of us. You have to learn to love the people, even when they don't love you. Learn to love the people, even when they don't love you. It's perfect advice for a new government. Do the right thing, even if it's not popular. Keep forging ahead in the direction of the public good, even if the public can't always see that destination that you're aiming toward. But I have to say, in the days since Murray drew his final breath, I've reflected that it's not just good advice for leaders. That is good advice for life. Learn to love your neighbor, even when they do not love you. Learn to love the person who hurt you, who caused you pain. Learn to love your children, even when they push you to your limits and beyond. And over his great life, Murray learned to love us, all of us. He showed that with the TRC and everything he did. He loved the people, all the people. One of the last times I spoke to Murray Sinclair, that nurse that you heard about, Bernadette, she was feeding him ice chips in the ICU of St. Boniface Hospital, and they were cracking jokes on each other back and forth. And then a drop of water trickled down onto Murray's face. So I leaned in and I wiped it off with a napkin. Suddenly a thoughtful look overtook him and he stared out the window. I kind of braced myself like, this is it. Murray's gonna break it down. How to be as wise as Murray Sinclair. Here it comes. He turns back to me and he says, you know what I'm having a really tough time accepting is the Premier is wiping my chin. We all knew his sense of humor. We knew his love for his family too. Like Murray found his greatest meaning in his kids and grandkids and his late wife, Catherine. And so to his kids and to his grandkids, you who know who you are as Anishinaabeg, you who are practitioners of our Medewan spirituality, you who love one another so unconditionally, I know that today is full of a lot of things, but what I wanted to say to you directly is that it's in you that Murray authored his greatest work. You are a testament to his good life in how well and how awesome you are. And within you burns the hope that Mazina Giizhik had for the future of our nation. Murray Sinclair defeated the legacy of residential schools, at least in his own life. And he did it through you. And to witness the way that you've honored your father and your mushum this past week, and the way that you honored one of your mothers earlier this year, I know that the family ties that you have will never be broken. That is a legacy. So I want to say to the family, the way that you feel about your dad, that is how Murray Sinclair made us feel about our country and what it might become. My fellow Canadians, Nietzsche, Anishinaabe, took. I think that part of the hurt that we feel at losing Murray is this sense that perhaps we're also losing those great things that he made us see within us. That our past is not a condemnation of our future. That we can share our truth. And that we deserve reconciliation. And so some of the tears that we shed might be to mourn that we're losing our grip of those visions that Murray Sinclair helped to conjure within us. But I want to say this. Though we have lost our teacher, we have not lost his teachings. And he described that path for us so beautifully, did he not? Learn to love the people. Now that Murray's left us and he's taken his wisdom and his humor and his great spirit with him, we might feel as though we've lost a father figure, our leader. He led us on this path to reconciliation through his words and actions, after all. But do you know who else changed this country for the better? You did. And you, and you, and you, and you. All of us have. And we did that together. And So sad as we might feel today, we still have each other, and we still have his legacy. In our hearts, in our minds, and in the aspirations of people right across this great land. And so if you miss Murray like I do, and if you want to keep his vision here with us, then let's continue his project of building a nation where every child matters. Niigaanwewidam Sinclair, Mazina Giizhik.
So that we can reconcile it. She put it in the page. So that we can reconcile it. If I can. It's in my blood. It's in my blood. Oh, oh. My blood. Why does it feel like we're on the edge, staring down at certain death? Why does it feel like the story ends before it starts? So we were here in these fading memories, oh, we were here. Oh, in these fleeting stories, oh, we were here. Oh, in these disappearing words, even when they stop losing meaning. It's in our blood. It's in our blood. Oh, oh, oh. It's in our blood. It's in my blood. I guess we come, we go, just like the days is light and dark in the morning rays. I guess I know, just like the snow, we fall, we melt, we fade away. A month, a day, a week, a year, just like to say that we were here. So we were here, oh, in these fading memories, oh, we were here. Oh, in these fleeting stories, oh, we were here. Oh, in these disappearing words, even when they start losing meaning. It's in our blood. It's in our blood. Oh, oh. It's in my blood.
From Sandy Lake First Nation, that was Asenabi. Merci Asenabi to Sandy Lake First Nation. This brings an end to today's memorial. Thank you all for joining us to remember and honor the life of the Honorable Murray Sinclair, Mazina Giizhik Iban. Ceci nous amène à la fin de la commémoration d'aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup pour votre présence lors de ce moment qui nous permet de commémorer et honorer la vie de l'honorable Murray Sinclair, Mazina Giizhik Iban.
dancer in this world. Do you walk the sun dance alive?